are you listening to? Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn. We have a fantastic show tonight. We have Salt Lake County Councilman Dave Alvord, and he'll be followed by Chris Null. And we're talking about more crazy stuff in Salt Lake County. Like,
it never ends in Salt Lake County. You have no words.
I know, but so why this is important to everybody else in the state is because Salt Lake County really is the 800-pound gorilla, and they do start to impact policies around the state. So even though we're going to focus on Salt Lake County, it's important to know these things that go on in this county, and you can watch for them in your own county. And so we're going to welcome Councilmember Dave Alvord, former mayor of South Jordan, and you're talking about an issue in Salt Lake County that, I don't know, back in 2000, Salt Lake County changed the form of government from a commissioner government where commissioners really serve the functions of executive and legislation. Then we changed to a separation of powers form of government where there's a legislative branch, an executive branch, and the value of that, at least the people who want that form of government and who lobbied for that form of government, they tout that as the benefit, is having separation of powers that can issue or place a check on the other, that's somehow more accountable, more effective. And yet, we have old laws on the books that did not keep up with that change in Salt Lake County. So we now have a situation where we actually have two offices in Salt Lake County, or two scenarios where the legislative branch has to play Mother May I with the executive branch, and then there's an executive that has to play Mother May I with the legislative branch, which throws separation of powers out the window. So we want to hear from you, council member, what those specific things are, and really why does it matter?
And why it's relevant right now.
Right now.
What's going on right now with this issue?
Well, Kim and Carolyn, it's so great to be with you. Big fan of the podcast. Big fan of both of you individually. I think you both do amazing work for our state.
Thank you.
This is super important. I think, Kim, you teed it up really well. I came from a background of being a mayor of my city. And as a mayor, we had our own legal review. We had our own legal counsel. We called him our city attorney. So whenever I wanted to pass an ordinance in the city, we would have, his name was Ryan Luce, great lawyer. He would let us know if everything worked with state law, with constitutional review. And if it didn't, he would tell us specifically why it didn't. And after a little back and forth, we'd bring forth an ordinance, and then it's just like Schoolhouse Rock. It became law for the state, and it was a wonderful thing.
And mostly it's like how many chickens you're allowed to have in your backyard, because that's what people care about in city government.
Yeah, city ordinances have a lot to do with zoning and issues like that. But surprisingly, there were quite a few ordinances that we needed to bring forward and get his help with. Things like signs where they're appropriate and other issues. And so when I came to Salt Lake County, I was kind of hit with a rude awakening. The first red flag for me was that one of my colleagues wanted to pass a policy that was very straightforward, very within our rights. She wanted to pass policy that had to do with county facilities and masks of all things. And instead of giving an up or down legal review, instead, we got a stonewall. And because of our process, usually it has to go, before it can make it on the agenda, it has to go before these attorneys. And instead of the attorney saying, hey, if you change this and this, you're perfectly legal, go for it, they said, we think maybe you ought to not do this policy. We think it's going to make bad feelings with the mayor. We think she may actually take away masks at facilities within a couple of months. So can't you just hold on to it? And so they had this kind of back and forth for about 2 months. And I thought, gosh, that is really inappropriate. You're supposed to be giving us an up or down legal review.
Well, wait, who are these attorneys, though? Were they your attorneys?
Okay, so
legislative branch attorneys?
I'm really appreciate you clarifying that, because instead of it being the council's attorney, like I had experienced in our city, it was actually Sim Gill and his right-hand man, Ralph Chamness.
Okay, and they are executive branch. right? Those
Yes,
are executive branch officers.
They are to execute the law. That is their statutory job to prosecute the bad guys. And they do have statutory authority that I don't know if it was not discovered before. And I can get to that in a minute. But back to the story, they were able to slow walk policy that we had all rights to bring forward. They slow walked it for 2 or 3 months. And lo and behold, the mayor lifted the mask mandate. And this was again going into summertime when she felt safe to do so. And so these attorneys, instead of playing the role as legal advisors, they were actually influencing outcomes for the county for one of their clients. And so if you can imagine, their client is both the mayor and us. And so if there's ever a conflict between the legislative branch and the executive branch, they are placed in a very tough situation. Now, they happen to currently share the same party. And so I think that's why they probably broke towards the mayor in that instance. But let me tell you where I got a little even more alerted to this. There was an opportunity where the county was going to update our ordinances in regard to the federal Medical Leave Act. You know, if a woman has a baby, she's entitled to time off, and they've extended that to spouses, to husbands. And so you get time off, and some of our county ordinances were out of date. But I was surprised to learn through this process that our county attorneys felt that the word mother was actually illegal and problematic. And so they actually changed the ordinance to say, instead of mother, it was person giving birth. And then they made some other changes that got us a little closer into federal law. And I said, okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting modification. Yeah. I would like to make a substitute motion that we retain the word birth mother, because I think that's more accurate to the English language. Yeah. A woman who delivers a baby is a mother. And that's when they announced to me, mother is illegal, Councilman. And I said, excuse me, I don't agree with your legal review. Can you break it down for me? I said, please show me in federal law when the word mother is problematic. Can you cite any federal law? And by the way, this was the irony, Kim and Carolyn. Federal law, the FMLA language uses the term birth mother. This was the very act that we were trying to come into compliance with, right. And they used birth mother. And so I really thought this is a strangulation of the law. I said, okay, then tell me in state law. So they came up empty. There's no federal law that says birth mother is problematic. Tell me in state law where the term birth mother is problematic. Nothing. Can you tell me anywhere in the Constitution, the state Constitution, the United States Constitution, where the word mother has been problematic, that's an issue? Empty. And I thought, okay, this one's the big one, because surely they'll come up with something out of some liberal state. I said, can you give me any case law? Has a city or a county ever been sued for the phrase birth mother? No, Councilman. This has never actually even been tried in court. We did an exhaustive search. We couldn't find a case in court. And I said, then how in the world are you telling me that we can't retain birth mother? That was the status quo in our county. That's FMLA. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, we're concerned that it would create a hostile work environment.
Oh my gosh.
For anyone that has gender dysphoria to feel like they had to be called a mother to get time off. And we said, okay, well, we'll go to great extents to solve that. And so our council attorney came up with language where he said, we are going to define a birth mother as any woman or any individual. They even took the word feminine out of it. Any individual who carries a child through the gestational period all the way to delivery. And so,
to avoid the word mother, we replaced it by 17 words.
That's what woke language looks like.
Even with that concession, they said, no, we're sorry. The word mother is just so offensive that we cannot approve this to form. And so I actually had the votes to pass birth mother, to retain that. Mm-hmm. I came in there with 5 votes with my agreement with my colleagues. And one of my colleagues said to herself, I can't vote for something illegal if our lawyers are telling us this is illegal, they're the smart lawyers. I'm just a citizen legislator. I do not dare go against them. And so the ordinance was my substitute failed, and now the term birth mother is in the books.
So these are people who should not be Democrat or Republican.
Are you talking about the
person
who deferred to the lawyer?
The person who said, I don't have enough of my own personal brain to think this through. I've got to trust.
Answer to that.
Now I want to know Republican, Democrat, because it sounds Democrat.
This individual that switched her vote was a Republican.
Needs to not be on that council. Needs to not be on that council.
So this was the situation that I said, okay, red flags, red flags. Yeah. If they cannot justify it in law, not to mention that we know that lawyers can interpret law differently, but they don't even have a stretch on this one. Right. I knew that was a violation. And so that's when I reached out to my state senator, Senator Fillmore, and I said, listen, we've got a problem in Salt Lake County. Incidentally, I asked our county attorney, why hasn't this come to a head before? And he said something very interesting to me. He said, in his 12 years with the county, the legislative body has done very little original legislation. They've functioned as a pass-through or as an approval board. And so the mayor's office would often bring ordinances and legislation, and then the council would say, let me ask a few questions. And inevitably it would, I would say 9 times out of 10, it would be a rubber stamp. They would approve it.
So that actually...
So you had...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Don't.
Oh, and I was just going to say, and so you have some new blood in there. You've got myself, and you've got Councilwoman Theodore, Councilwoman Stringham, and we brought a little bit of an energy to things. And I don't want to take too much credit, but I feel like the council kind of started to learn to fly. They had their wings clipped for a while. They learned to fly. We also showed up with a Republican supermajority, and so it wasn't too common for them to bring forward ordinance. I think they would do 1 or 2 a year, and now we're doing more like 1 per council meeting is originating with the council. So that's a refreshing change.
I do want to say something though, because when there was the change in the form of government, and I will say, I was paying attention then, but not as much as I pay now. Right? I didn't realize it was that long ago. I had forgotten that, but there were discussions about, well, Salt Lake is a large county, having just 3 commissioners, right? It's harder to represent, and dividing these authorities, the legislative and the executive branches, having them vested in different individuals and bodies is good and healthy for the system. But it seems to me like the way things are functioning now is almost as though you have an executive, the county mayor, and they have almost, through powers that have been given to their people, now there's one person. Now there's a king or a queen, which is even worse than 3 county commissioners, right?
And I can't even imagine if that happened in other levels of government. I mean, could you imagine if Sean Reyes, if Attorney General Reyes had to approve any legislation that the state, and he also has the full sort of constitutional duty to defend some of the things that the legislature does if it goes to court, if it's challenged, but he does not have the role to say, pass it by me first, or you don't run it. And I think I can't even believe that for 22 years, we have had legislators on the Salt Lake County Council that did not recognize that and fight for it and fix it. And the fact that how long, I don't even know how long we've had a Democratic DA's office doing that legal piece. But really, how much has been decided this way?
Right.
How many bad decisions have been made in the county because that's the process? Or how many good decisions have been impeded because that's the process? And I think we've seen a lot of those in the last couple of years. But, I mean, I'm appalled to learn. I'll tell you what, honestly, I just learned that today. And I'm kind of reeling with that since I first found out about this bill and the impetus and that holy cow, that the legislative branch of the county has just kowtowed to this, but now we're.
But I think it's probably because you didn't have Republicans.
We didn't have a supermajority.
We didn't have a supermajority, and had we had one, you didn't have a lot really being done, right? There was not a lot of legislating going on, it sounds like.
Well, I mean, in the county, though, there's lots. I mean, whether it's tax policy or whether it's transportation funding, I mean, there's definitely the budgetary processes, but ordinances, I don't know how many ordinances you look at a year, but I wonder if just the tradition and the culture has been not, like David, like you, or Councilman, like you said, the culture and tradition has been not to bring stuff forward.
And I also wonder if the types of things that you're bringing forward, if they align with what the county mayor wants. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, but if what you're bringing forward is what the Democrat DA or the Democrat mayor likes, and maybe that is a problem that we've had in Salt Lake County for a long time.
Or they suppress what they don't like.
Yeah.
So bringing
if I
this
could share
forward.
a third example of, and what you're getting at is kind of this constitutional concept of separation of powers.
Right.
And I have another example of where it's been problematic in the county, but just to quickly review, you mentioned it earlier, Representative Coleman or Kim. This is Kim and Carolyn.
Yeah, that's right.
The legislature has their own legal team, the LRGC.
Yeah.
Even the courts have their own legal counsel. You'd think, well, they're all lawyers. They don't need a lawyer. No, they do. His name's Brent Johnson. He's with the AOC. The Attorney General's office has legal counsel. And then we have a general counsel to the governor, Kathy Bonus. And what's important about all of these lawyers is that they each have a clearly defined client. And in the county situation, and maybe it was okay during the commissioner years because you had this kind of hybrid legislative executive branch that then you have this other count, maybe a check and a balance. But once you move into more of a constitutional form where you have an executive mayor that has a veto power, you have a legislative body, I mean, just like our United States Constitution, and then you also have the courts that can help resolve disputes. But each of the branches is entitled to legislative review and its own legislative council. Otherwise, you have a conflict of interest. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to get to. We had a situation where, I don't know if you recall in the news, but the Salt Lake County Council, and this was a good moment for the Republicans, in my opinion, 6-3, we voted to overturn the mask mandate in August for the schools. And that was unanimous Republican vote. And we had a lawyer sue Salt Lake County, and I don't know, that it's spurious grounds, that it's something to do with the kids not being protected from COVID or something. And anyway, we had to meet about it as a council because we had a crisis. The district attorney stands up and says the mayor's not sure she wants to defend the county against this lawsuit. And in these situations, the mayor is our client. And we went, excuse me? The legislative body overturned a mask mandate according to state statute. And you're supposed to be the county attorney, not the mayor's attorney. You're the county attorney. And he goes, well, no. The mayor is my client in these moments. And so we held our breath in suspense for 2 weeks where the mayor finally acquiesced and said, yes, I will allow the district attorney to defend the county. Wow. And so for me, that was strike number 3 when I thought, this is out of control. We need our own legal counsel. I was so grateful to Representative Fillmore. He's bringing it forward. Now, surprisingly, we find ourselves at a 4-5 or a 5-4 vote in the Salt Lake County Council. They have now taken an official position in opposition to this legislation.
So who missed that day in government class on how separation of powers works, why
it is
vital.
Important. Yeah, vital.
Who missed that? Yeah. I mean, okay, I'm not going to really ask you to enumerate these people. We can go look at the record. But some Republicans voted against shoring up our separation of powers in Salt Lake County.
Or establishing them almost, right? Yeah, sorry.
They were concerned about costs, and they have their stated objections, and you can contact them to get a sign for what, an idea of what their objections may be. We actually were able to resolve the cost concern, and then I think it's a situation, and I don't want to mind read. You'll have to ask each of them, but it may just be somewhere where someone's been in that office for so many years. This is how we've always done it, and change feels dangerous. And that might be one explanation. I can't perfectly represent their views. You'll have to ask them that themselves. But as someone that had been taken advantage, and then one of my colleagues also had been burnt pretty bad by this process, I was very offended and troubled that my colleagues didn't have our back and say, wow, well, even though this hasn't happened to us, we wish that they hadn't done it to you. Therefore, in solidarity, we're going to help you make this change, Councilman.
Well,
so I was happy that 4 of my colleagues, 4 of the Republicans supported it, but 2 did not.
So you mentioned the money. I think it's an outrageous argument to say because we know what is spent in Salt Lake County, and there's outrageous amounts of things government is doing that I would argue is not the role of government anyway. But we can't find the money to do it right, so therefore we're going to keep doing it wrong and in a way that does not affect our checks and balances, that is an affront to separation of powers, that weakens you, because we don't want to spend the money on that. We don't want to spend the money on doing it the right way.
So I would
we're going to give thousands to Sundance Film Festival,
right.
But oh no, you can't have your own lawyer, Dave. That's just too expensive.
Because the Democrats are going to continue controlling what you are able to do in your role. So tell us what this legislation does that Senator Fillmore is running, and let us know as we wrap up how people can help.
Oh, that's a great question. I think if any of you listening could send an email to Senator Thatcher, Senator Fillmore, right now it's in the Senate committee. What the bill does is it allows, they call it a permissive bill. And so it allows the Salt Lake County Council to receive legal review from either the council attorney or the civil attorney, who is Sim Gill. And we can actually create an ordinance to define that as a body, but it leaves discretion in our hands. I think the latest iteration is going to change the term approve to form to advise to form. And that's an important step as well, because no longer can it be a veto. And so then we could have Sim Gill or Ralph say, hey, here are my concerns with this bill, but he doesn't have an opportunity to sign or not sign off on the bill. He can only give his legal opinion, in which case we could say, thank you very much, Ralph, and then we could have Mitch, our council attorney, give his legal opinion. Yeah. And if they're together, then we probably trust it. It's like 2 doctors agreeing. But if they're not together, then we get to make the discretionary choice as legislators as to whose legal advice we think is most sound. But it certainly puts it back on us to make the decisions that we think we were elected to make.
Which is actually really strange that some members of the council voted against having that responsibility. I'm fascinated by that. Why an individual would run for public office
and not want to do the job
and ask to not have the responsibility of actually deciding what it is when you are a representative, when you're somebody elected to legislate, not having the power to decide what you can legislate or not, choosing not to have that authority. That's just fascinating.
Well, it sounds like they don't really want the job. Maybe they shouldn't have that.
Maybe.
We should take a look at those folks that missed that day in government class.
Maybe.
In elementary, junior high, high school, and college.
I can tell you that should this bill be signed into law, it would be a massive victory in starting to change the culture of Salt Lake County. Salt Lake County has been an island in a very conservative state where all kinds of strange things happen that are almost inexplicable. And I think this is one of the source reasons, is because the systems in place have not allowed conservatism. They haven't allowed any dissension from the administrative review. And so I think this is actually big time. Some of my colleagues say, "Well, this doesn't really matter either way, David."
Oh
And I
my
go, "No,
gosh,
this
it's
is
huge.
Yeah. Well, can we just say, as Salt Lake County residents, thank you for bringing this issue to our attention, to your state senator's attention, for kind of following through and making sure that something gets done on this,
I
because
may,
we
I
all
may get
care.
wrapped around this one
Yes,
because
yes.
this is crazy.
I'd missed this one, but I'm going to be all over it now. So thank you for joining us tonight, Councilman, and thank you so much for
thank
your
you,
work.
Kim and Carolyn, and best of luck to your podcast.
Thanks. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Okay, next we have the Salt Lake County GOP Chair, Chris Null. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
You guys just did something that I think, I said, guys, you guys.
Yeah,
you
it's okay.
all just did
It's called the
something.
English language. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah, we know what you mean. We're not too PC
Jeez.
here.
Okay, so the Salt Lake County governing body and maybe you can even explain how the county party is organized, just did something, I don't know if it's ever been done. You censured a member. And having never been done, and that's no light thing. Has it made the news yet? It will if it hasn't. Twitter world, who knows? Tell us what you did and what led to that big of an action.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing this up. This is really important to us as a party, I think, because what happened was that the Salt Lake County the Salt Lake Tribune editorial board posted or published a article called "Utah Leaders Have Surrendered to COVID Pandemic." The editorial board writes, that was the name of the editorial. And so in that, there was a number of things said which you may or may not just agree with, and we didn't really care about most of that. But what was said that was frustrating and especially concerning during these times is that they had called upon the National Guard troops to act as a posse comitatus. In other words, they wanted the National Guard to force those who were not vaccinated to not be, quote unquote, anywhere.
Okay, so first of all, you used the word frustrated.
Yeah,
okay.
I was going to say that.
No, that
wasn't
is
my
not
word.
what I mean. I was horrified, mortified,
Right. Yeah.
and
I was
please
trying to be nice.
remind me what country we live in.
Yeah.
Remind me what country
Right.
we live in. So.
Exactly. You know what? Growing up, we would have never, ever considered saying something like this in America. We're the land of the free. And to call in the National Guard.
2 years ago, we wouldn't have thought of
Yeah,
this.
that's right.
Right. Yeah. It's insane to even joke about it, and is insane. And so when it first came out, I realized, okay, it's a Salt Lake Tribune, and I try not to speak too negatively about the media, but they're not friendly here in Utah. We all know that. Yeah. There's very few that are friendly, and but then it came to my attention that we had a member of our very own State Central Committee who's on the editorial board.
Okay, so first of all, so back up a second and tell people what this organization is. So what is the Central Committee? What is the County Central Committee, State Central Committee, Executive Committee? Because a lot of people don't know what that means.
And can I just
you're asking a lot.
Can I just say one thing quickly before we get this explanation? As somebody who grew up in New York, so I come here and served a mission in a former communist country right after it opened up. When I started hearing State Central Committee, it started making me a little nervous. I wondered about the state, just a little bit in our form of government.
I'll be completely honest. I hate the name because I thought the same thing, right? But really, it's just the body. It's the governing body of the Utah Republican Party. So the State Central Committee is the governing body.
Like a board
you
or
have
something.
The chair. Yeah, it's like a board. Yeah, and there's approximately 200 members. I don't know exactly. I think it's 223. I think if I remember right. So, and they are the ones who help write the bylaws. They do a lot of things, right? And it's mainly the intent is to elect good Republicans, good conservative Republicans for the party, and that's at the state level. Now at the county level, we have our own central committee as well. That's also the governing body of the party. And those are made up of like precinct chairs and legislative district chairs, or house chairs, we also refer to them as, or Senate chairs and region chairs. So it's the organizing body of the party, and at the county level. So, but what happens is our delegates, I'm sorry, not our delegates, our central committee members, every 2 years elect CCM members. So state central committee members. And one of them was Michelle Quist, who is on the editorial board of the Salt Lake Tribune. And so being on the state central committee and being on the editorial board and having basically agreed to this, to supporting this article, was, like you said, Kim, it's insane. I forget the word you said, but it's infuriating that somebody would say something like that in America, let alone somebody from our own party. We're the party of freedom, and it sickened me, to be honest with you. Now, I can disagree with somebody. I have no problem, having a disagreement with somebody and having a conversation about it. Unfortunately, she took it further. Twitter got pretty bad. I don't know if anybody noticed. She ended up finally taking some of the things down, but it got pretty bad. Some other members of our executive body. Now, executive body, the county executive body is made up of the officers, the region chairs, and the Senate chairs. Some members of that body recognized what happened, and they were furious. And so it was brought up in our executive committee meeting. And I can't say too much more, because we wanted to have a very open conversation. We wanted to be able to say what we wanted to, be honest and have a very open conversation. So we went into what was called a closed session, or an executive session, which means we do not talk about what happened in there. So I can't say what happened, but obviously everyone knows the outcome. And the outcome was we passed a resolution censuring Michelle Quist for her refusal to publicly denounce this. And so that's the outcome. And I think the big question a lot of people ask is, well, what's a censure? And I had before we went into executive session, because I kind of knew this was coming. I had a good conversation about this with our parliamentarian and some others. And a censure is a warning. We're saying, look, this is a real problem. This is a serious problem. And this is kind of like your, 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. I don't know that it's 3 strikes, but this is your warning. This is not acceptable. And so we wanted to make that absolutely clear. The executive committee did make that absolutely clear. If you read it, it's on our website. I think it was very well written. I had nothing to do with the actual writing of it. I did suggest some edits afterwards, but ultimately it was written by somebody else. But I fully support it. I think that what she's done and what she said are allowed to say in her name is absolutely abhorrent. And so I'm glad we did it. I'm very glad. And I think it's time that we start standing up as a party and pushing back when people say things like this.
Okay, so thank you. You kind of set up my next question. And for a couple years now, the Republican Party in particular, but across the state of Utah, there's been a lot of discussion, and namely after some very infamous legislation several years ago that starts with an S and a B and ends with a 5 and a 4. That there's been a lot of discussion about freedom of association and First Amendment rights that are inherent in political parties, and the courts have affirmed that. The courts, through all of that litigation, the courts have affirmed political parties' First Amendment rights. But so then there is now there is the culture and the atmosphere around that party. Well, what do we do as a Republican Party to affect those association rights? And we want membership, and we want to grow the tent, and we want all these things, and we don't want purity tests, because we don't want it to strictly define who's allowed in the party. And yet there was a line that was crossed, and I think that was a pretty universal line. That anybody who really values our core constitutional rights and freedoms were absolutely shaken by those words in the prominent state newspaper, and horrifying that a human being raised in this country could think those thoughts and articulate
Kim,
them and stand
yeah.
behind them.
Absolutely, it's horrifying to me. And so I'm actually Italian. You'd never guess it. I'm as white as can be, but I'm Italian, and my ancestors they came from Sicily. I should say I'm Sicilian. My grandma would have just beat me over the head for saying that. I'm Sicilian. So they came to the U.S. To escape Mussolini. I mean, this is the kind of things, my family is very aware of what happened in some of these countries and how bad it was. And they came to the U.S. They love America. My family, the Italian side, they absolutely love America and the freedoms. We had, it's my great aunt, I think it's great aunt. I apologize. I should know this, but she fought to keep my family out of the camps that the Japanese ended up being in, right? During that time, she fought, and they did everything they could to show that they loved America and they supported freedom. I can't even imagine what my family would say to somebody like this who would dare to call on the National Guard to put us.
Well, I would say, I think we just lost your volume real quick, but I would say it's more than just loving the country. It's about loving other human beings. And what we value about the freedom in the country is that it affords other people, it affords our fellow man to enjoy freedom. We love America because it lets other people be free. And so that is what was so alarming, of absolutely jarring, kick in the gut, I mean, whatever, that someone could hate other people in society so much that they would articulate those words and have such a lack of care and love for their fellow.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And this is how things happen. And I hate to use the example, but let's be honest. Hitler didn't just arrive in his country and start putting people in camps. There was a process, and the process was people started accepting comments like this, started accepting that it's okay, mandates are okay, this is okay, that's okay, and that's how it starts. Now they don't mean anything by it. Maybe it's hyperbole. Maybe it's something else. It still can't be acceptable. It cannot.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say.
No, I was done.
I think that the interesting thing about this is, I think most of us would feel like if we said something so offensive to those on the other side, they would choose to shut us down because it isn't about freedom, right? Whereas for us, there was no effort to shut it down. You can say it, but we are going to point out that it is not acceptable and express very clearly that it is not what we stand for as Republicans. And if you are an integral part of the leadership in our party, this is not an agenda that works.
Well, and so for us in the party, and you just said, Chris, earlier, you said you think we should do more of that. Tell me, when one of the governing members of our party, and by the way, that it happened in proximity of some other actions by governing members of our party that are not consistent with what we really believe in and core values of freedom and so forth. What does it do to the party? What do you think it does to the party? Or someone who's maybe considering a walk away from another party, or someone who was young and looking for who they identify with, and that's what they got. I mean, what does it do to the party to have those kinds of messages?
I'll tell you what it does. Yeah, I'll tell you what it does. I mean, so when I ran for chair, I said, look, I'm about principle. I'm not about personalities. I'm not going to talk about, the big personalities that are out there that are so controversial, but I'm about principle. But if we can't stand up for the principle, then what do we have left? Who are we? Are we even a party? Do we even stand for anything if we don't stand for our principles? This is one of our core principles.
Yeah.
So I felt obligated. I didn't feel obligated. I felt called on to do this. And I didn't even do it. I'll just be honest. But when it came up, I felt like absolutely I support this. I have no regrets for supporting it. But just like you said, we were not kicking her out of the party. We're not shutting her down. We're not censoring. We're censuring, which is a warning, right? We're not putting the fact check label on top of her and saying you can't speak. What we're doing is we're saying you can speak all you want. We just are going to be clear. We disagree. This is against our principles. So there's a huge difference. So what it does to the party, if we didn't say anything, then it turns those people away. The people who are seriously concerned about our country and about our freedoms, it tells them that we're not the party for them.
Right.
But I want to make sure that they know we are the party for them. We are the party we claim to be. I can't control every elected official. I have no right to control them. But we can certainly, stand up for our principles.
So I would ask one last question as we close this out with you so that you can get on with your adventures many miles away from us, which I think your next adventure is going to bed. But anyway, and that is, what do you say to those who say, we need to be a big tent? I mean, this is an ongoing discussion, right? At what point has the tent gotten too big? At what point is what you stand for so violative of what we stand for as a party that we can say, not here, not with us? I mean, how do you navigate that?
Oh, well, so it's easy. I'm going to change the analogy just a little bit. It is a big tent, and the big tent can grow as big as we need it to, as long as there's not somebody inside burning it down on top of us.
Yeah.
And that's what this is, right? The tent is there.
Perfect.
It's based on principles. And we can't be in the tent if it's on fire. So it's time to make sure that they're not lighting a match and making, causing problems. So this is, I'm sure, and I'll just say, I'm sure Michelle Quist is a pleasant person. I did try to contact her. Didn't get a response. I'm sure she's a pleasant person. I'm sure she's great. But we have to stand up, and this is the time to do it.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think you also, we'll have you back on in a couple weeks when it's caucus time and teach people how people like you get elected, how people like Michelle Quist get elected to govern the party and then want to suppress the people from holy cow. But we'll have you on later to talk about all of that, because that is something that people need to be involved in. If they liked what you guys just did, what you all just did as an executive committee to offer the censure, or you don't. I mean, we get to choose this very grassroots and bottom up. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And
Thank you.
Let me just say one last thing as we let you go, and that is thank you truly. Kim and I both feel this, I'm sure. And that is, I feel like the county party has been more vocal in recent months about what we stand for and being clear on that at a time when there's a lot of confusion, I think, for people in a lot of different realms as to what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. I think the party in Salt Lake County has drawn some clear lines, and we appreciate you speaking out.
So tell us where we
Thank
can
you.
find where can people find you, and let's hear your donation pitch.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So first of all, go to our website. It's slcogop.com. And then there's a donation button there. But I got to tell you, what you need to do is you need to sign up for the E-Club. So click on the donation button and sign up for E-Club. And if you donate $10 or more a month, then what happens is we invite you to our E-Club luncheon, and you get to meet with a legislator or a county council person or once a month, you get to sit down at lunch with these people, and you get to ask questions directly. They tell you what they're doing. You can ask direct questions from them. You learn a lot. I've learned a ton. So please join the E-Club. Go to our webpage, and if you want to read, I really encourage people to read the resolution for censure, because I think it's really well written, so that you understand we don't just hate people. we really don't. This is a really well written document. But please go to the website slcogop.com.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Have a good night.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Good night.
Wow. Yeah. The Salt Lake County Party's doing great things.
Yeah, they are.
So we have great guests lined up for the rest of the week. It's going to be really fun to have more people on. And,
yes, especially with so much going on, right? I would have thought that our entire night tonight it could have easily been filled with legislators and legislative issues, but there are so many things going on everywhere around us.
So who's coming
to
up
talk about
this week?
So, well, we
Or
have
the next couple episodes.
Yeah, we have Senator Kennedy, who's going to talk about a genetic privacy bill that he has coming out. And I have to tell you, I haven't reviewed the rest of my notes. I can't tell you who else we have.
So we do have Senator Lee is looking at coming, federal, Senator Mike Lee.
Yeah.
Is looking at coming on next week.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
John Johnson, State
Okay,
Senator
great.
John Johnson. So we do have a bunch of people lined up. And FOSMU,
Yeah, did we have Kara Birkland coming on at some point?
Well, yes, we do. In fact, she will probably be on this week. That
Okay.
will probably be this week.
Representative
rather than
Birkland.
next. Representative Birkland.
yes.
To talk about her women in sports bill. There were some changes being made to that.
So we are halfway through the legislative session, so
Yes.
things are picking up really, really quickly. And for a lot of cases, we're just learning about some new bills that we're a little bit scared about.
Yeah.
So we're going to
Yeah, learning about some new ones that have been out for a little while. There are just so many different issues to try to be on top of and wrap our heads around. In fact, I was talking to somebody recently. I'll just quickly finish with this. I was talking to somebody recently who just started getting involved in this whole process. And, 2-3 weeks ago was the beginning of the session. I'd send her stuff. You might want to have your eyes on this. You might want to have your eyes on this. She said to me, "Are you kidding me? This is like playing whack-a-mole.
Yeah, it is
like, what is
whack-a-mole.
going
That's
on
exactly
here?"
it.
But yes, that is what it is.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, the legislature will start with over 1,000 bills that are proposed and probably somewhere between 600 and 800 that will actually move through the process. And in the end, it'll pass maybe up to 500 bills.
Yeah.
That's a lot of law.
In
that's happening
45
right now.
days.
In 45 days.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it takes everybody's eyes on this. So I think this was a great episode to have people telling us what things we need to pay attention, how we can get involved with some really impactful bills. But so we'll be bringing some more to you. And again, look for us on your favorite places that you, or the places you find your favorite podcasts. And please like and follow us. And
Yeah, on YouTube, on Facebook, subscribe to our channel. We will be coming at you throughout the rest of the session, the next 3 weeks and beyond. So thanks for joining us tonight. And I've got to stop saying tonight.
I forgot you were leading out. So I'm like, okay,
No,
let's
that's
start
okay.
it. So
I'm totally fine.